What's up, YouTube fam? Welcome back to my channel. This is the third part in a three-part series of just real estate terms that you should be familiar with. If you guys remember, in the first video, I talked about, I said that there was different financing that you could get aside from just using a bank. And so we're going to talk about creative financing terms so you can understand what that means. Basically, you can do creative financing where you are doing like an owner financing, which what this means is instead of the owner may not have a mortgage on their property and they want to sell it, but they don't want to sell it for a cash offer. They want to get a pretty standard like market value offer, something close to that. And so what you can offer them is an owner financing agreement, right? Where you basically upgrade them from a landlord to a lender, for example. So they are now the bank. You're not using a normal bank, you are using this person to be your bank, and you negotiate with them. You decide, what are we buying the property for? You know, what's the purchase price, right? Then you decide if there's gonna be a down payment. You'll decide what the monthly payment to them will be. You'll decide if there will be interest or not, right? And then sometimes, depending on the term length, which is how long the owner is willing to hold this note, which is like the mortgage, essentially, how long they're willing to hold that mortgage to you and when they want to be paid off. So if they say 10 years, 10 years, that would be the term length of that owner financing agreement, right, that you came up with. So typically it's called terms, and it just to make it really simple and, I don't want to complicate it. It just means that they're willing to sell over time instead of all at once, right? So sometimes a cash offer does not work for everyone, and so they would prefer to actually sell it over time. Their taxes is much less than if they were going to get a big, huge cash payment, because they'll have to pay a large chunk of that to the government, right? Uncle Sam always collecting the taxes, and they would rather not do that. So owner financing could work for people like that. Another thing that I was going to say also, there are different financing in place where, let's say that you would really want a term length for 15, 20, 30 years, right? When you're buying something, you want it to be, that payment stretched out as long as possible, because your monthly payment is less and hopefully you can pay them off, and not have to pay a big balloon payment. So balloon payment, let's say they want a 10-year term or a 5-year term or something like that, but the monthly payment that you're making to them is not enough to pay them off in that 10 years. So one way to combat this is with a balloon payment, which basically means that at the end of that 5, 7, 10-year term, you will pay whatever is left, right? Whatever is remaining on the balance. So just to clarify, the creative financing could be something like a subject to, and subject to means it's subject to the mortgage. So this means there is a mortgage in place on the property. So subject to means there is a mortgage in place on the property. So you need to take into account the mortgage information because you are now responsible for paying that mortgage, right? When it's an owner financing or just owner financing, that means that there is no mortgage in place. The property is owned free and clear, which means there's no other mortgage on it and the owner owns it outright. So you are just negotiating with them what they want to make monthly, how much they want you to pay them over time, etc. Other things that they may ask you will be, or that may come up when you're doing owner financing, is like a proof of funds, right? When you're dealing with investors or landlords or a little bit more sophisticated, they may ask you for a proof of funds. They want to make sure you actually have the money to do this kind of thing. It might also come up in the wholesaling side, right? Where they may ask you for a proof of funds. I wouldn't be concerned with something like that. You could get a proof of funds from like a hard money lender if you were looking for that, and that's just showing that you actually have the cash to deploy to buy that property, right? So that's what proof of funds is. Another thing to take into account would be the arrears, which means if you have a mortgage in your property and you are behind on the mortgage, right? You haven't been paying every month, there are arrears on the property, which means you got to pay, $5,000, $10,000 of late fees, interest, whatever it is you haven't paid over the last few months. Those are the arrears, what you are behind on in your mortgage. And so then you need to bring the mortgage current, right? Up to date. Everything is going to be paid off. And so those are just typical terms for you to be familiar with. Another term that I've heard is a seller hybrid model, where there is a mortgage, but the seller also has significant equity, right, on the property. So they also want to get paid aside from the mortgage. So you can also work something like that out with them, where you pay the mortgage, you also pay the seller a certain amount, and everyone is happy. But there needs to be enough difference between the actual mortgage and what you could actually rent it out for. And depending on your investor, I would say no less than $300 typically is what I have heard in the industry, because in the state of a recession, if market rent goes down, if you can't rent it for as high as some people do in a great economy, you're taking that into account and making sure that you're still able to pay the mortgage, you're still able to pay the seller, everyone is still happy, you're still making a profit. So just something to take into consideration. I hopefully you guys took something from this video. Click the link in the bio for any more information that may help you guys out. And also thank you so much for everyone that puts a comment in the comments below. Let me know what else you guys are looking to learn about. But yeah, subscribe to my channel, don't forget, and also put a like on this video. Hopefully it brings some value to you guys. Thank you guys.